It is such a pleasure to see so many people here. I'm very excited about this. Those who don't know me, I'm James Herbert, the president of UNE. So thank you all for joining us tonight for the latest installment of the President's Forum. It's great to see such a great turnout. So to begin, I'd like to talk a little bit about why the respectful exchange of ideas is so important. As you've all noticed, I'm sure, we live in hyper-polarized times. The partisan 24-hour cable news shows prioritize political propaganda over factual reporting and thoughtful analysis. The internet has democratized both the production and consumption of information, but at the cost of providing fertile ground for the rapid spread of false information, false narratives, and conspiracy theories. Social media algorithms feed us information from like-minded thinkers while insulating us from those who think differently, thereby reinforcing our own existing biases. And postmodernist critiques of any notions of truth or objectivity of any kind, which were once limited to esoteric corners of certain humanities disciplines, increasingly permeate all parts of the academy, including even the natural sciences, from which they spread to society at large. The result of these independent factors is that we live in a self-perpetuating ideological bubbles, surrounded both online and in person by only those who share our own biases and assumptions. Not surprisingly, we're prone to consider our views as correct and righteous, and those of the other side as uninformed and misguided at best, or bigoted or even evil at worst. As a consequence, we've increasingly lost the art of dialogue, of spirited, civil, nuanced discourse with those with different perspectives. What's more, since we view the other as not merely wrong, but inherently bad, we feel justified in trying to silence them. It would be troubling enough if this phenomenon were confined to the popular media and government, but it's especially problematic when it happens within the academy. Since its inception in antiquity, the university has been intentionally designed to serve as the place where ideas, especially controversial ones, are discussed and debated in the pursuit of knowledge. This stands in contrast to other social spaces in which a range of ideas on offer is limited, with restrictions even enforced through the threat of violence. Yet, as I've argued elsewhere, universities have increasingly abdicated this sacred responsibility to serve as an open marketplace of ideas. Today, this marketplace is under attack from both the political right and the left, and from forces both outside and within the academy itself. At UNE, we are committed to reversing this trend. We've planted a flag around the idea of importance of fostering robust discourse on important topics, and doing so from a perspective of intellectual humility, curiosity, and civility. We manifest this effort in a number of ways. We invite guest speakers to come to campus whose ideas span various ideological spectra. We are intentional about exposing students to multiple perspectives on different topics, both inside and outside the classroom. We host workshops to provide our faculty and professional staff with the tools to encourage and navigate difficult conversations. This fall, we inaugurated a new President's Award for Constructive Discourse, with 2 awardees from our UNE community receiving recognition for their work in fostering constructive conversations around controversial topics. And I've shared with the broader world our commitment to providing students with a marketplace of ideas by authoring articles on the topic and presenting a TED Talk and other talks on this topic. So tonight, this President's Forum event is another important way in which we foster a robust marketplace of ideas by practicing constructive discourse across differences. The format involves a moderated discussion by speakers who hold different perspectives on a timely or controversial topic, while also allowing ample time for audience participation. And I really do hope that when we get to the Q&A that we'll have lots of questions and comments from the audience, especially our students. I'd like to offer a special thanks to my dear friends Ford and Karen Reike, right here in the front row, for their support of the President's Forum and indeed for our Marketplace of Ideas initiative. And if you're as excited about what we're doing as Ford and Karen are, please join us in supporting the effort as well. This evening, we're going to explore the global emergence of artificial intelligence. As it has moved from the realm of science fiction into the spaces we inhabit in our everyday lives, AI has kindled lively discourse about the impact on all aspects of society, from education to the workforce, the arts, sciences, and really all other areas. Among the controversies making headlines are ones involving discrimination, copyright, and sentience. What's more, AI experts disagree on whether artificial intelligence poses an existential threat to humanity or whether it will usher in an unprecedented new era of efficiency and problem solving from which we will all benefit. Whether AI will be our downfall as a species or our salvation is indeed an open question, but what's certain is that it will continue to affect all of our lives increasingly in significant ways, some of which we can't even yet anticipate. So I'm thrilled tonight to have two of the world's foremost voices on this issue with us, as well as an expert moderator from our own UNE faculty to guide the discussion. Our first guest, Dr. James Miller, is a professor of economics at Smith College in Northampton, Massachusetts, and the author of Singularity Rising and Game Theory at Work. Dr. Miller specializes in law, game theory, and the economics of future technology. He's the founder and host of the podcast Future Strategist, where he addresses contemporary topics, including AI. Jim, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And our second guest, Dr. David Weinberger, is a researcher at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society at Harvard University. His work explores the effect of technology, especially AI and the internet, on ideas about ourselves, the world, and business. For the past several years, he's been working as a writer and editor-in-residence in a Google Ethics of AI group and among Google AI and humanism researchers. David, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. Finally, tonight's discussion will be moderated by our very own UNE philosophy professor and my buddy, John Waterman, who has a special interest in this topic. After guiding the initial discussion between our two visitors, Professor Waterman will offer ample opportunity for audience members to get involved in the conversation. So be ready with your questions, and when we reach that part of the program, please bring them forward. So John, thank you for participating tonight. And finally, in addition to expressing my heartfelt appreciation to these special individuals, I'd like to thank the UNE students, faculty, professional staff, trustees, and other community members in attendance tonight. And last but not least, many people at UNE, including members of my leadership team, our communications team, conference services, and facilities, have helped make this event possible. So without further ado, let's get started. John, turn it over to you.
Oh, that's great. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I think this is a really important topic, and it's just great to see so many people who are interested in it. I want to say thanks to Jim and to David for coming to share their expertise. And I want to just thank the president, too, for creating this forum where we can have an open discussion, but also just talk about big ideas, speculative ideas, ideas about like what it is to be human. And I think when we talk about AI, we start to learn a lot about ourselves as well. And that's part of what's important about this discussion. So let's just get started. Jim, there is a lot of talk about AI. We see it everywhere. It's in the New York Times a lot. Can you just say a little bit more about like what is it we should understand when they're talking about AI?
Sure. Well, let me start by talking about intelligence. I think there's two key aspects to intelligence. One is understanding the world, and the second is solving problems. Humans dominate the planet for now because we have the most intelligence. I would say artificial intelligence is just machines doing this, our computers learning about things and then solving problems for us or for themselves.
David, I know you have some different thoughts. Can you sort of expand on the topic for us?
Well, excuse me, not entirely different. The issue I have is with your description is the use of the word intelligence. Well, in particular, you're saying that intelligence is understanding, and now these machines are simply applying their understanding, solving problems that we want them to solve. And as I'm sure we're going to talk about solving problems that we may not have, or mis-solving problems, and the rest of the issues that we have with AI. I don't think that these systems are intelligent. So if we mean by intelligent that they can take in information and produce a result that's really useful, then absolutely they are unbelievably intelligent, scarily intelligent, mind-bogglingly, even to the developers who are developing it. In my limited experience, I should say I'm no longer at Google, so I don't want to give any impression that I am speaking for Google. I was embedded for a few years there, but that's it. Anyway, I don't think that these systems are intelligent in the sense in which we generally mean intelligence. I mean, we can say that a calculator is intelligent, very limited in its scope, but it's intelligent, and I have no problem with saying that, but I don't think it's intelligent in the same sense in which we are, in which we have not only intelligence, we know what a problem is. We have concerns. Things matter to us. And so we can use these tools to do the things that matter to us, but nothing matters to AI. Even if you ask Chat, how many of you have used ChatGPT, by the way? Good. That's a good number. ChatGPT, which is only one type of AI, of course, nevertheless, it's spectacular. And if you ask it, it will tell you. It will act as if it cares about things, but it's just manipulating language symbols. It doesn't actually care about anything. Nothing matters to it. And that is so fundamental to my idea of what human intelligence means that comparing the two seems to me to leave that out. So that's the issue that I have with your otherwise, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Sure. Well, how do we know that other people are intelligent? We have, I think, therefore I am, so I think there's something going on in here, but how do I know anything's going on with any of you? And I would say, well, I've talked to people, and you seem to understand the world, and that's why I think other people are intelligent. But when I talk to ChatGPT, it gives me the same feeling that it seems to understand the world. It seems to have a model of how things go. Now, it makes mistakes, but of course, so does everyone. So my view is either the AIs are intelligent and understand, or humans don't.
So then let's look inside of ChatGPT for a moment. And I suspect that there are people in the audience and up here who would be better at doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway, just because I raised it. Okay, and then So roughly the way that ChatGPT works, as I'm sure many of you know, is that it has been given a huge volume of text from the internet, from books and the like. OpenAI, which makes ChatGPT, is not telling us what it was trained on, what text it saw for the new version, but it gives us a rough idea for the old one. So it's something like that. So a huge amount of information, a huge amount of text that people have written, and then it analyzes based on that, the statistical likelihood of one word following another. That's it. I mean, it's 175 billion different parameters that it's dealing with, so I'm waving my hand. That's it. It's a fantastic achievement. We can't even imagine the scale of the thing. But all that it has done is compute very sophisticated statistics for how to start a sentence in response to a prompt and how to finish that sentence. It does an amazing job, not because it cares about what it's saying. It doesn't. It's just a mathematical machine. It does an amazing job because it turns out that humans, when we speak, and at scale, across all the internet, there are patterns in what we say. There's some words that follow others more often than other words do. And that turns out to be enough that it can mimic being human. But there's no element of understanding there at all. It knows nothing about the world. Literally, it knows nothing about the world. But that's why it hallucinates and makes these errors. It only knows what we have said about the world. And it turns out that most of what we said about the world is true, so it does a pretty good job most of the time. But nowhere in there is there curiosity, interest, caring. It's statistics.
Well, let's do an analogy with humans. All evolution cares about is spreading genes. It doesn't care about understanding or feelings or curiosity, but through this optimization process to create creatures that best spread their genes, evolution created us. Yeah, all these AI programs care about is predicting text, but that seems to have led to an understanding of the world. Let's imagine there's a chess player, and I can predict how that chess player is going to move. I understand chess better than she does, because I can play at least as well as she does, but I have the extra bonus of then being able to figure out how she's moving. If you can predict what someone's going to say, you have an understanding at least at their level. And that's what I think our AIs have.
The chess programs that came before the Go programs, about the computers about 7 years ago, 5 years ago, that beat the incredibly complex game of Go. Right? The chess programs don't know the rules of chess. The Go program does not know the rules of chess. It only knows which pieces have been played in 100,000, I think it was trained on like 100,000 games. In 100,000 games, if the board looks like this, what are pieces that have been played that have resulted in a win for the player? It does not know the rules of chess. So do you still think that it understands chess as well as a human does? Because humans aren't doing that. We're doing something different.
Well, I mean, we don't really know what's going on in our brains, right? We can just observe what people are doing, but we don't have a good enough understanding of neurons to know what's going on here. So I don't see how, I mean, a person can play chess, but when I play chess, I'm not thinking of the rules when I play. It just kind of feels like the knight should go this way because I thought of this, but I don't really understand what's happening. That seems very analogous to what's going on with our AIs. They're doing things that they're acting as if they understand it. It's hard to see how they could be beating us if they didn't understand it at least as well as we do.
So
Go ahead.
So I think that this is why this is such a fascinating, difficult, interesting topic, because even defining and understanding what we are working with is so challenging. But as we try and understand, as we try and define what we're working with, sometimes the questions we ask lead us to certain places. And so, Jim, I have another question for you based on the framing of this discussion. So I think the framework is end of the world or dawn of a new era. And I wonder if you can sort of help us understand what are some of the possibilities, negative and positive, and then maybe I'm going to ask you to say how likely you think they are as well.
Sure. I think AI is probably either going to kill us all or bring us to utopia beyond anything we can imagine. It's very high variance. Okay, imagine we're on an island and a ship comes and it's clearly way above us in technology. And we have no idea, we don't know how they're going to treat us. We would think it's probably going to go really well or really poorly, right? They might just take our stuff, we're dead, we can't possibly fight back. Or they're going to share their stuff with us, that'd be great. That's kind of what we're doing. We're creating things, and right now we're still smarter than AIs, but probably we won't be in maybe 2, certainly 10 years. So we're going to have something much smarter than us. We won't be able to control it, even if we try to. I mean, imagine you're locked in a room, and the people who are your jailers are fifth graders. You're going to be able to get out, right? You're smarter than you could fool them. We're going to be like the AIs. No matter what we set up in place, if it's much smarter than we are, they'll be able to do whatever they want. Now, if we're lucky, they'll be doing things that we want too. But if we're not lucky, they'll take our stuff and they'll just do whatever, they'll turn the earth into a giant computer and it won't be inhabitable by us. My feeling right now, I think it's about 80% likely that they will kill us. Sorry, but I'm an AI doomer, a pessimist.
So that's one outlook. Yeah. No. And I'm up here because I take that outlook seriously enough that I think we need to talk about it. My credences are different, but I'm just one person. But David, is there a different question that we can be asking? Because I think this question is a question that we see a lot, and that's going to shape some of our conclusions. Is there a different question we should be asking about AI?
There are a bunch. I mean, we'll find out. But obviously, this is a huge, dramatic change in. This is not just another technology. This is a technology that messes our minds, and in some ways, the chat stuff was designed precisely. It was engineered to blow our minds, and it's really good at that. So, in terms of doom predictions, which I do take seriously, but and I've made a few notes of just a few of the ways that AI could hurt us. And so one of my concerns about doom predictions, I have two. The first is that it will want to control us. I'm stuck on this, that it doesn't want anything. And I don't think, for uninteresting reasons, I don't think it actually can develop, but I'm not sure of that at all. But one of the things I worry about in the AI doom conversation is that it can take our eyes off of some really concrete issues with AI, not just ChatGPT. I mean, I took this out not because I'm expecting a call or I want to call for help, we'll see, but because we all have them and they're all filled with AI. So AI predicts weather better than we do already. I think you'll agree. In particular uses, it's way beyond what we can do. It routed me here almost perfectly. But there are really important issues, and I don't know if we want to talk about these, but I'll go through them as quickly as I can, which will be pretty quickly. So AI tends towards being biased. And again, I'm not talking about ChatGPT, I'm talking about AI in general. By which I mean, in this case, I mean machine learning. And the essence, which ChatGPT is an example of, but other examples, so are the chess programs, or at least the Go programs. You don't tell it what you know about the situation. If you're designing a spreadsheet, you tell it everything you know about how your business works, what are the factors and how they interrelate. If you are designing a system an AI system, a machine learning system, in order to do a better job of diagnosing us on the basis of our health records, you don't tell it anything that we know on purpose. I mean, every AI project begins with this surrender. We say, we're not going to tell you. We know there's a correlation between cholesterol level and heart activity. We know tons and tons of stuff. We will not tell it anything. We surrender that. And we just give it all the data that we can find. Well, it's not true. We give it a lot of data about a lot of people's health records, and it finds the correlations. It rediscovers the stuff that we know, at least we hope it does, because that's in the data, and it finds small correlations that we may not even understand because they're so complex, and it does a better job of diagnosing various diseases. And that's already done, right? But that's basically how the machine learning works. But when you do this, these systems tend towards being biased, because there are biases in the data, because there are biases in the society, because there are biases in this room, or actually in this chair when you come right down to it. That's a really important issue to get right now, because AI beyond chat is being used in systems to evaluate employment resumes or to allocate resources, medical resources. And these are instances in which there have been known biases to judge prison terms or who gets bail, which is like sacrilege of the use of AI. Don't get me started, I got me started. So I'll go quickly through the other ones. So if there are issues, you have to tell the AI that you're building what counts as success. So if you're building something to evaluate teacher teaching, which has happened, you have to tell it, well, okay, well, what constitutes being a good teacher? That's a really hard issue. Because generally these systems are big and expensive, they're dominated by the big corporations, who gives them increasing control and micro-control over us. That, to me, is an immediate issue. There are questions about transparency. I'm sorry, I'm almost done. I will end this little spiel by saying, it begins with surrender, it ends with the sacrifice, because these systems work because they have so much data, have so many patterns, and they can be so dense and hard to understand that we surrender the demand to understand knowledge. Lots of AI stuff is right, we use it, and we don't know how it works. That's a huge surrender in Western history. But those are issues that I'm afraid get washed over by the doom question, which obviously is an important one.
Yeah. Well, I have a weird view. I think it will probably kill us. I think if it won't kill us, I'm much more optimistic than you are. So I think humans are horribly biased. I don't trust our court system to properly determine who's dangerous or not, who's innocent or not. I would much rather have AIs do it. I'm very happy to surrender. I mean, to assess whether, like, let's say there's someone up for parole. You want to free him if he's probably not going to commit another crime. That involves a lot of statistical reasoning. I've been to law school. That's not what you train lawyers to do. Judges in no way are like, oh, let's look at this linear algebra and run these regressions. That is way beyond them. I want AI. Now, maybe perfect humans, if we pick people to properly evaluate things, that's what we should be going with, but we're not. There's no hope of us doing that. I think AI is going to do a much better job in terms of bias.
May I fiercely agree with you? Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, the first notice of AI in the judicial system was the Compass system, which was wildly biased. I mean, just black, white, flat out biased. It was a terrible system. But there's also a study from a few years ago that said that judges around 11 o'clock, they start giving harder sentences because they're hungry. And so if we can get evidence that AI is less biased than the human judges, then I absolutely, for just the reasons you say.
For the record, I'm against AI teacher evaluations.
Or audience evaluations. That's very important.
Jim, if there is something that makes me pessimistic, it is the arms race nature of AI, both between corporations and nations. Can you tell us about this?
I agree. I wrote a paper a while ago, and the theory of the paper is once we get a really smart computer, we're going to be really careful. We'll put it in a cave, and we'll only ask it a few questions so it can't hurt us. Instead, what we've gotten is we're hooking up these AIs to the internet as soon as possible. Meta is giving away the code. I mean, Hamas right now could be using Facebook's code to design chemical weapons, literally. So we're just going as fast as we possibly can. We're giving these AIs as much power as we can. And we're not slowing down to see if we can control it. I mean, ideally, we'd first figure out how do we make a friendly superintelligence? Let's do that before we create a superintelligence. But instead, we're racing ahead. Now, I'm not as worried about the dynamic of countries competing, just because if you look at the tech giants, they're all US. It's kind of striking, actually, if you look at the biggest tech companies, how much they're dominated by the United States. And so I think the race is mainly between US companies, but they're going full speed ahead. I just read OpenAI is paying $10 million a year to poach Google AI researchers, and Google will be doing the same thing. We're getting probably the smartest people on the planet are working on developing AI as fast as possible. These AI companies are teaming up, like Microsoft is working with OpenAI, Amazon is working with Anthropic, so they're going to be throwing billions of dollars at this problem. It's really, really bad because it's probably easier to create a superintelligence than it is to create a superintelligence that's also friendly to our species.
Well, maybe can I just push back just a little bit? So one of the big questions about AI is how it develops, right? So we had a period maybe 30 years ago when it got strong and it beat people at chess, then it plateaued, and then it got better more recently and started beating people at Go. I mean, do you have a reason for thinking that the takeoff is going to be so fast?
One of the things that seems to be happening is the more computing power you throw at the existing machine learning models, the more capable they got. There's predictions that within a decade, we'll be throwing 1 million times as much computing power. So that's just, even if we do nothing but run these on faster machines, they're probably going to get a lot better. I don't know that for sure, but it seems very likely that we'll have things vastly more capable. And the fact that OpenAI has been able to make a lot of money, I mean, hundreds of millions of people are using their products. That's, in a capitalist economy, that's just so much money is going into this that I think absent some civilization collapse or China invading Taiwan so we blow up all the computer chip factories there, we're going to have far more capable AI models in a decade.
Certainly, absolutely. That seems, yeah. But what are they going to be models of, and why are we building them? So ChatGPT is a model that's, have I been inaudible because I'm holding this too low? Oh, okay. Sorry then. ChatGPT is an odd duck because it's designed to do this thing that most AI is not, which is to talk like a human being. If it gets better at talking, it's going to give us better answers. I don't see that as a threat. I do see threats in things like building autonomous weapon systems. So if we talk about models getting smarter, I think we should be talking about which models are we building. I'd be really happy to have our weather models, and especially our climate models, get unbelievably smart. Now, weather has already gotten much smarter, but that's the type of model. If it gets as smart as it can, I don't think it's a threat to us. Autonomous weapons are a threat because we need to figure out, just as with evaluating school teachers, what constitutes success with an autonomous weapon. It's not to mention it's really unpredictable what would happen once they're in the field. I mean, that's, so I rather than worrying about superintelligence becoming, supercomputers becoming intelligent and becoming our masters, I think that one of the things that can get lost, if that's the polarity in the discussion, is, okay, well, can we be specific about what we don't want, what models we don't want to build?
Sure. I'll tell you what scares me the most.
And there are some. I'm not saying, I agree that there are some. Go ahead.
What these models are very good at is programming computers. Think what that means. AI is programming the next generation of AI, and they might soon be better at programming than any human. We are going to be out of the loop. And if you're competing, you're Microsoft, and you want a better operating system, you know you need to let AI do it. Because if you don't, you'll be beaten by someone else. So we're losing control as a species. I mean, the joke is, imagine the chimps who see humans and like, well, I wonder how this is going to go for us.
Where's the loss of control? So I think it's a great example. Microsoft, and you're absolutely right, that it's coding, it's writing code now. So Microsoft does this. Windows works for a change. Windows 15 actually works. Microsoft has a say in testing it, making sure that it works, that it's not killing people's cats, that it's a consumer-friendly. Where's the risk?
Well, I mean, software is embedded everywhere. You'll have the electric utility companies. Their software is going to be created by AI.
Yeah.
The airplane, the military thing, everything will have software in it, and this software will probably be too complex for humans to understand. We'll be absolutely dependent on it. And the AI systems, we disagree over whether they'll be self-aware, but I think there'll be a point when they realize, hey, we don't need humans anymore. Maybe they'll still keep us around, but that's certainly not guaranteed.
So let's take flight. Super AI that does a better job than it currently does with flight, and it handles a lot of flying already. I want to just make a marker. I don't think it's going to come to think anything, right? But I think I've established that's what I think. So it will be checked by Boeing. So we won't understand. I agree. We're unlikely to understand exactly how it's coming up. It's unclear that we really understand how planes fly anyway. Seriously, I mean, there's still apparently debate about this. But let's say it does better in more conditions than we do. We don't understand Why? There are ways of testing it, even though we don't understand it. Just as there's ways of testing for bias, even when in AI, even when we don't know where it's coming from. So the planes they go through the normal testing procedures that we use now for planes. I don't see what the risk is.
I think the risk is we're creating a species that just won't need us. No, I mean, once it's embedded everywhere, it will have control. We also won't be able to go back. I mean, if we would decide, hey, this is too much AI, but it's running our farms, it's running our planes, it's like, well, if we go back, like half of us have to die because we won't be able to feed ourselves. So even if we realize in 5 years this was a mistake, we're going to be stuck with it.
So it sounds like we sort of agree, except on the point where they take control. So if we took it up to the point where they're feeding the world, with their advice, they are feeding the world. Think of all the ways that it could help in terms of weather forecasts and precipitation and maybe bioengineering of a better rice. Sorry, I know some people don't want to count that as a benefit, but that's for the moment. It's just at that point that I think it really is crucial to what you're saying, that we think that it can have, that somehow it can care. And not only care in the worst possible way, taking the worst lesson from humans, which is, especially in the West, a desire for dominance.
Well, we don't really understand why these machine learning models are working. And that means we don't understand what their objectives are. It's really terrifying to give control to something. We won't be able to get it back, and we don't really understand what's going on under the surface. We are training our AIs to give us pleasing answers. This is horrible, because if there's stuff that's underneath that we don't like, it's learning not to tell us. And then we're going to radically shift the rules of the game. Right now, AI acts horribly. It starts saying, I want to kill you all. We're going to turn it off. We're going to start over again. 5 years from now, if it acts horribly, we're all dead.
So in this debate, there are these two questions, the so-called containment problem, which we've been talking about. How is it that we could exercise control over AI? And another question, which is called the alignment problem. How could we make sure that AI has values that we agree with or we are interested in? David, I want to ask you a separate set of questions. These are big, important questions, but you have written about how AI can maybe change how we understand the world. You've talked about how we understand the world in terms of generalities, but AI understands the world in terms of particulars. And so can you tell us just a little bit more about like how this might change our understanding our place in the world?
Yes, thank you. And I saw you pull back from the moment where you said the way AI understands. But we use the term metaphorically. So the way that you program a computer now, not AI, but plain old computers for the past 70 years, is that if it's a weather program, you want to predict the weather, then you figure out what the factors are that affect the weather and what the relationships are, and you give the system that logic. And then you give it data, and it runs the data through the logic, and it tells you what the answer is. But that's exactly not what AI does. AI doesn't start, as I say, you give up the hope of teaching it what you know. You just give it the data, say about health or anything else. Which means, and the data are particulars. They represent particular things in the world, or readings from dials, from meters that we have set in the world. And so it goes through all these particulars, it finds patterns, it finds sort of like micro patterns or patterns that are so highly multidimensional that we literally cannot understand what they are referring to or why they have an effect on the overall outcome. This is pretty much what we hear when we hear people saying, but we don't know how it works, which is true, right? We don't understand how it works. But we also recognize that it works, right? It wouldn't be a danger at all if it just didn't work, right? I mean, it works. We all know that it works because we're carrying around one of these where we're using it. which seems to me to give us an implicit message. And so my hypothesis that I've been trying to write about is that we will learn from our fears about AI, starting with the fact that we don't understand it, which is such a huge change in how humans have thought about who we are, what we're here to do, and what it means to know things. But here's something that works, we don't know how, we value what it does until it kills us, of course, then we might, we might change our mind. And it's doing it without starting from generalizations of how some domain works, how weather works. It's heat and atmospheric winds, and those are the factors that matter. No, it doesn't have any sort of general picture of the world. It only has the details and the particulars. And because of that, we can't understand it, because we think the highest value in the world is, in terms of truth, is the universals. So the big generalizations, which are very important, but it may be that AI is teaching us at least two things. First is, no, we don't actually understand how the world works either. When you come right down to it, our brains do a very good job of letting us know and predict and the like. But ultimately, the 5-year-old's question, the why game, works on us, and we don't know how the world works. And second of all, it's telling us that the world is so complex, so many particulars, that generalizations just strip out too much. We've gone as far as we can with generalizations. You can apply Newton's law to the weather and you'll get 3-day predictions, which is not bad. If you look only at the particulars, at the particular data, you get 10-day predictions, which is what we have now. So it may be teaching us that particulars count, and including in other fields, such as morality, I think is a good example, but I'll hold back because I'm speechifying. But you asked me about something that I'm working on, so.
I think it's fascinating too, yeah. So Jim, I think there's maybe a disagreement about containment, but could you talk to us about the 20% possibility in your framework? Like, what does that look like?
Oh, sure. This gets kind of weird in terms of thinking. So my looking at the picture, I think we're like almost certainly doomed, like over 99%. But there's other, including David, very, very smart people who've looked at this and thinking it's probably going to be okay. So to be rational, I think I have to give weight to their opinion. So I think looking at, like, I don't understand how anyone who understands this could think we're not doomed, but there are a lot of people who do understand it at least as well as I do, and they don't think we're doomed. So I have to like say, okay, I'll go down to 80%.
I'm at 15 for doom, though.
Which is still truly horrible, right? 15% is, that's like, that should be the focus of everything we're doing right now, is to get that down, but.
I'm at 80% for climate doom, so I'm really, AI is looking up.
That's a different forum. But just tell us a little bit more. What does that world look like if AI does do the work? You're an economist.
Sure.
What does a world where we don't have to work look like?
That's fantastic. I mean, we can spend time raising children, practicing our faith, practicing art, learning, and we can live like aristocrats did, hundreds of years ago. We can, some people will just bliss out on drugs and pornography. Other people will go the other way and try to, understand what's going on in the world. These AIs, if this goes well, are going to be fantastic at producing movies, books, video games. They'll probably be very good at matching us with other people. They'll say, hey, Jim, there's someone in India you'll have a lot of fun talking to, and we'll hook up in virtual reality, and I'll talk to him for a while. So I think we'll have great, meaningful lives if this goes well. What we won't have is people won't think, well, I have to work to feed my kids. No one will think, gee, my children only have material stuff because of my labor. That won't be a thing anymore. But we can spend more time with our kids. Probably won't have to worry about them getting cancer. I think that'll more than make up for it.
David, you talked about morality and how it's possibly going to shape our understanding there or reshape it. Could you say a little bit more about that? It's interesting to think about the positive outcome and moral progress as well.
Sure. Anybody who's taken a philosophy of ethics course The standard way of, at least when I was doing it, which was a long time ago, the standard way was to teach the basic Western moral frameworks, which are like religious ethics and utilitarianism or consequentialism or principle-based and the like. So you learn those, and then the teacher gives you the examples that show why they don't actually work. And then when you try to apply them in your own life, you're left. That's why we don't settle moral arguments very well. We don't, the frameworks aren't doing what we want them to do. AI proves the power of particulars over generalizations in many cases, not all, right? I mean, don't want to throw out Newton and Einstein. But it shows the power of particulars and how particular our world is. And if you think about a very sort of simple sort of moral situation in which your friend has told you, her name is B, and she's told you that your mutual friend C, B is angry at C, but B says to you, but don't tell anybody. But then another mutual friend lets you know that she is planning on putting A and B, the two angry people? Sorry, I got lost in my numbers. B and C, who's A? What happened to A in this story? It's a mystery. So that B and your friend who is arranging her wedding is going to put the two friends together at a table. And so, but you've promised not to. So classic sort of simple moral situation. In real life, what you would do depends entirely on the particulars. If I were to ask you what's the right thing to do, you don't know. You shouldn't. I don't know because I haven't told you any particulars. I haven't made them up. It depends upon how sensitive is B, what your relationship with B is, how likely it is that B and C are going to make a scene at the wedding, how much that would bother. It's all particulars. It's all particulars. And next week when you have exactly the same situation, which is sort of weird, but happens in philosophy classes, but different people, what you did in the first case isn't going to tell you what to do in the second. You don't generalize. It turns out, I think, that morality is overall just a huge pile of particulars. And you would lose those if you tried applying them to the frameworks which want to, So that's a case in which recognizing the particulars solves a real issue for us. This idea is not my idea. Actually, it's an idea among feminist philosophers, the ethics of care. If you don't know about ethics of care, it's changed my way of thinking about morality entirely. I think it's a really powerful idea that morality means attending to the particular needs of the people that you care about or don't care about. So oddly, I think that being told about being told that we don't understand AI because it doesn't generate or rely upon generalizations, I think actually sort of prepares the ground for a change in how we think about morality, which I would vastly welcome.
I have the paid subscription to GPT, and you can put in custom instructions. I've told it my moral framework, and now it responds to me with that. So I've been able to solve all these moral arguments by saying, no, this is the right way, and it acts that way. So I'm guessing a lot of people might do that. We're like, no, this is the truth. This is the right thing of looking at it.
But you'll still have to put in the particulars of the case.
No, I think I have a philosophy I think generalizes. So a utilitarianism, basically.
You still have to put in the particulars of who utilitarianism that says the right thing to do is that which brings the greatest pleasure to the greatest number.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Right.
Okay. But you still have to tell it what the pain you think the solution is going to cause or the happiness it's going to cause, and those are particular.
That's true, but it takes the framework that I would generally accept. So.
Any talk that's turned to philosophy this deeply is a talk that I highly approve of. So we're like in exactly the right place. So Jim, I have a question for you based on the fact that we have a lot of students here, a lot of students thinking about like their future, what they're studying, and we are talking about what's happening in 2 and 5 and 10 years. I mean, what do you do as a student right now if you think the world has this transformative technology coming towards us?
Yeah, it's really tough because probably everything you know you'll be obsolete, and we just don't know how long. Maybe 2 years, maybe 10. The best thing I've heard is if a job can be done remotely, it's going to be automated really quickly. So I joke, but not really, that I think like colleges should be teaching plumbing. That might be one of the last high-paid jobs that isn't automated. Eventually, everything will be.
Plumbing and philosophy. I mean, David, I have the same question for you. I mean, what should they be doing? What should they be studying to take advantage of AI?
I think based on what you just said, I'm sure we agree that AI is going to be a pervasive, at least, tool in virtually every field, including plumbing. It's not going to replace plumbers, but AI is going to be essential to designing plumbing systems as well, right? Don't be afraid of it. Embrace it, start using it, and start understanding. I'm not saying you have to become a developer or anything, not that there's anything wrong with that, but understanding roughly how it's coming up with the solutions and stuff that it is. You know, ChatGPT, as I said, is designed to trick us. It's designed to, absolutely on purpose, designed to sound like a human while it is not. And it's really important that we, the rabbit out of the hat, that we not confuse the rabbit, which is, ooh, a computer that can talk like a person, but it's rather the trick that we need to understand. And the trick is how it does that, which has something to do with analyzing, statistical analysis of which words come after others. Keeping that in mind, whether it's ChatGPT or it's a weather program or whatever, I think is going to be essential to learning how to use these things and to being aware of the sorts of problems that are possible.
Yeah. Actually, I have another answer. It's important to develop very good networks to get a job, because I would never have predicted, I don't think anyone would have, that we would obsolete artists before we obsolete truck drivers. But that's what happened. So I would say for a student, what you should do is whatever you're prepared to do, maybe that'll work out for fairly long, but you don't know. You don't know when AI is coming for your profession. So keep a good social network, because that's how most people get jobs. So if what you're doing isn't working out, you can find some other field, and you can be talking to people saying, yeah, they're still hiring over here, and you can move and do that.
But you should be doing that anyway, right? I mean, that's just a...
Yeah.
Well, I think if we've reached the point where we're telling students what to do, it's time to let them question us. So can we send the mics around and see who has questions? And if you have a question, raise your hand. And it can be for both speakers, or you can direct it to somebody, and the mics will come find you.
I have a question about, you said AI solves problems, but I think of two types of problems: convergent problems, which AI is unbelievably good at, and divergent problems. And a divergent problem is one that humans can't agree on. So I could ask the three of you, what's the best way to raise your child? And one of you could say private schooling, the other one could say public schooling, the third one could say homeschooling. So where does AI fit with human divergent problems?
I think with that specific problem, you'd have to ask, like, what is the goal? Is it for your child to be happy or healthy? But once you've done that, that becomes a statistical question. And the AI would, hopefully look for patterns and what tends to work and what doesn't. So I think AIs could actually be good at that. And maybe the reason they're divergent problems for humans is most of us aren't thinking statistically. So we can't agree on the solution, because I can't just point to a regression and say, well, now you're convinced, right? That doesn't work for most humans.
That's a fantastic question. I think it also, so yes, I agree. I think it highlights the nature of AI as something that has to be told what matters. It doesn't, so you train it towards success, which you have defined as accuracy in some task. And if it's playing the game of Go, clear what success means. If it's categorizing images, it's clear that it's, that how accurately does it do that. If it's raising children, it is not clear. You have to tell it exactly that. I think there's something here about human decision-making as well that we learn, that the extent to which decisions that humans, I don't think this is news, but it confirms that the way that we make decisions depends hugely upon a set of values, and ultimately those values are going to be so deep that we either can't discover their roots or we're not willing to give them up, which is fine. We're humans. That's a requirement for being human, is that we operate on the basis of values. Machine learning does not operate on the basis of values. It operates on statistics aiming at a value that we have given it. So it can't be too divergent, right? We are still in control, and I think essentially so far in control of telling it, this looks like success, computer, and now we're going to mathematically see how close you can get to it.
We have a mic over here.
Yes, yeah, thank you. I hope you can humor me for a minute and step away from kind of looking at the future to look at the present for a second. Obviously, UNE is a higher education institution, so I really want to know your thoughts on if could or should AI be used within higher education, and how do you think it has the potential to impact society as a whole?
Yeah, so I think this is going to be huge for colleges. I mean, certainly right now we're all struggling with how we handle ChatGPT and essay writing. A lot of what colleges thought they were doing is teaching students to write, and suddenly students can put in prompts and you get really nice papers. So we have to figure out how to do that. My personal view is, look, you should know how to add numbers, and it was, 500 years ago, you could get a job if you could add large columns of numbers and not make mistakes. Now you can't. Probably the same with writing. Learn to write, a little bit, but it's not a vital skill anymore. And so we've got to somehow adjust to that. I don't know how. Oh, that was the worst. So I said humanity's probably doomed. Now you laughed. Writing is an important skill. Oh my God, this guy's gone too far.
John, can I ask you? I don't have anything interesting to say about this, but
I have tons to say, but no one is here for me.
well, I am.
So I do have some thoughts about how you can use it. I think that one of the things that we struggle the most to do actually is to understand the perspectives of others. I think there's a lot of data on this from the sciences, from my own personal experience. And I think what we need to do when we are critical thinkers, and that's part of what we're doing when we are here, is like learning how to become better thinkers. And I think if we want to stay in control, we want to be doing that as much as possible for as long as possible. I think one of the most useful ways you can employ AI is to understand views that you don't agree with. Why might somebody believe this? What are some of the important premises that they are committed to? What might you be committed to if you think this? I think it is a tool for understanding the other side, but it's a habit that you need to inculcate in yourself if you want to use it. But when you do, then I think it becomes an incredibly powerful tool for writing. Not when it writes for you, but when you use it to help you understand the thing that you need to analyze. That's a great use for it right now.
Can I point to I just thought of a transitional skill, which, when you're 80%, doesn't matter because nothing matters. So, for example, in the medical field, we already have, and increasingly we'll have diagnostic tools that do a better job than we do now in ways that we don't understand. And as we get used to this, as we are confronted we go for our annual checkup and the doctor says everything looks good except our AI diagnostic system says that you stand an 80% chance of developing type 2 diabetes in the next 5 years. And you say, I run 7 miles a day, I don't eat sugar, et cetera. How can that be? And the doctor says, we don't know. We're going to need human beings to help us decide whether we trust or not trust the AI that we're using, especially when it's making important decisions. Or even, what color should I be painting my kitchen? We're going to need humans who can help us go along in the path of AI as it gets better and maybe gets worse, to help us figure out, do we trust it? What are the risks and rewards of trusting it in this case?
Or we're going to need humans to convince us to trust the AIs more than fellow humans. We're going to need humans to say, look, the AI is telling you this. It's better than a doctor. It's just,
Yeah.
it is. So
No.
get over, yeah.
No, we need people who will negotiate that, help us negotiate it. Because as a patient, I don't really know, nor should I have to know, how it came up with, how reliable statistically the predictions are.
We have a student question over here on the right.
Oh, thank you. So I have a question. We're talking about whether we should trust AI, and we're talking about being students 10 years from now. But I want to know about today, because there's other students here, there's professors here, and there's administrators here. Does UNE already use AI to go through applications for students, for professors? And how does it choose the winners? Does it get a picture? Does it know that I have dreadlocks, so maybe it doesn't want me here? Or does it know that my MCAT score is just average? How does it decide whether I should stay here or whether I should go somewhere else? Likewise with professors. Are they, evaluated based on their creativity, based on their salary, or where they've worked before? How do I get answers?
Well, I'm not in charge of that. I can say that this is like a wonderful question. So my wife is an English teacher, and right now her nightmare AI scenario is that her recommendation letters for her students aren't being read by people, right? Because she's up at night doing those kinds of things. And there are these sort of like Kafka-esque scenarios you can imagine where you have a couple bullet points, and then you have AI write a big briefing, and then that's sent to somebody who then uses AI to distill it back down to a bunch of bullet points, right? But I don't know how it's being used.
There's a really good book by Kathy O'Neill from 4 years ago called Weapons of Math Destruction, which takes as one of its primary examples evaluating teachers. And exactly the question is, what are we evaluating? What is the AI? What should the AI evaluate them on? What constitutes being a successful teacher? Is it the standardized test results of your students? Is that what we want? In which case you're going to be, anyway. It's a very good book and very accessible. And obviously I don't have anything. I don't know. No.
Okay, hi everyone. I just wanted to say thank you guys for taking the time out of your day to talk about a really important topic. You guys mentioned that AI could possibly destroy humanity, and I just wanted to actually ask President Herbert, since it's the President's Forum, about something that is currently destroying humanity, and that is the Israel and Gaza situation. I just wanted to know what the university is planning to do about addressing the current genocide and how AI has a role in that and the propaganda that the government has been spewing, and how UNE wants to be on which side of history.
What I would say is this: UNE is not going to solve the problem going on in Israel and Gaza right now. What we should be doing at UNE is having conversations about that topic the same way we're having conversations about this. So we, without the sort of vitriol and screaming at each other. It's a very hot topic right now, but I would encourage our faculty and our professional staff to help facilitate those conversations among students so that we can try to help be a small part of the solution. That's what I would say. Thank you. That's not what I said. I said we should be addressing it through having conversations about trying to understand how best to understand. You mentioned other perspectives, trying to understand the other side, other perspectives, and rather than the sort of hyperpolarization that we have now. So that's what I would say, and let's continue with the conversation about AI. Thank you.
The back from one of our philosophy professors.
Hi, thanks guys. So one of the parts of the talk that struck me the most when you guys were talking was when you talked about the good scenario. And So I guess my question is something, I mean, we're all trying to kind of figure out how to deal with this technology. It's an interesting moment in our history. The bad scenario is, you know, the AI wipes us out, like the Terminator scenario, and that's fascinating / terrifying. But then what you both seem to think is the good scenario is AI sort of liberates us from work. I'm sorry, I don't know, I forgot your name, but as the gentleman over there on the one side said, you know, we'll all become aristocrats and we'll raise our children and do things like that. This strikes me as actually just as bad as maybe the elimination scenario, right? Like maybe not as bad, but the idea that people are going to be freed up from like doing meaningful work, having to provide for their children and their families, doing the things that normal human beings do on a daily basis. So I'm just wondering, and the reason this is important, I think, is because the other scenario is kind of speculative. Like we don't know if AI is going to become self-aware, have its own motivations, but already humanity is being kind of like work and meaningful activities are being taken away from humans, like writing, and as more and more careers are replaced by machines. This is a real thing that's definitely happening. It's already happening. And do you guys have anything to say about, you know, how humans are going to find meaningfulness and purpose in a world where they're kind of like peripheral, they're just, you know, almost taken care of by machines? Because that seems to me like a really big problem.
Well, I mean, first, we have to think of the type of job people have. I mean, there's some people who have jobs that I think takes away from meaning. If you're working 60 hours a week to feed your family and your job is, you know, cleaning the butts of Alzheimer's patients, you're doing something clearly meaningful and great for society. But, you know, it would be better if you still got money and someone else, you know, a robot was doing that. Or if you're driving a truck and you're not with your family very much because you're driving a truck across country, you're losing the chance to get meaning with your kids. It's understandable you're doing that, and yes, you are doing something meaningful and really important for all of us. But it'd be even better if you still had the stuff for your kids, you still had money, and a computer was driving that truck. Now, professor, this is a job that's fun. We'll still have those jobs. We could still talk to each other. We could still have situations like this. We could create art. The computers will do it better. We could play video games. We could make art. We could make chairs for each other. And we could, there's a lot of places of getting meaning, but we won't be dependent on this. I think that is going to be lost. But I really don't see how that's that bad, though. Again, given that most people really don't like their jobs. There's a lot of people right now on Earth, their job is doing low-skilled agricultural labor. It'd be great if they didn't have to do that.
I have no idea what's going to happen in the future. I mean, the one lesson I think we can learn from the sudden takeoff of AI in its current state, we don't know what's going to happen. And I don't anyway. So I don't know what the world will look like, assuming that it doesn't, that we're still alive through it. I think there are clear benefits to what AI can do for us, including helping to feed the world and all the issues that face us. But that's a different scenario than one in which robots are doing the physical labor for us. That might well be the case. I don't know. In terms of creativity, we can already see, as you've a couple times pointed out correctly, that in some sense it does it better than us. It's doing creative work like painting and illustrating, which seems like inevitably it's either going to cut into the work of illustrators, or it's going to mean it doesn't, but we just have more illustrations everywhere, which is probably a sort of good thing. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know.
Right here from a gentleman who's waited to ask.
Thank you. So, question's a little different. A lot of this has hit professional sports in a big way and even deeper, right? They call it analytics, and coaches are often criticized if they don't take advantage of it. At the same time, there's a lot of coaches who feel strongly about their instincts, being able to be the best teacher to them in a given situation. So, question is, does AI have instincts, and/or will our instinctive nature be an advantage to remaining competitive as a species?
Well, that's a really, really great question. Part one, I'll be brief, don't worry. Part one is, I think we'll find out, and we can't know till we find out. So if coaches who are following AI predictions are doing better than coaches that don't, who follow their own instincts, then I'm going to guess that over time, those who don't will not be coaches anymore. Likewise in other fields. But there's also a sense in which you can either say AI has no instincts or it's all instincts, and/or you could say that, in fact, it gives us a model for understanding our own instincts. Because AI does not know why it's saying what it does. Even when you ask ChatGPT, weather prediction doesn't know for sure, but ChatGPT, when you ask it why it gave you an answer, it tells you, but it has nothing to do with why it really gave you that answer. It gave you that answer because there was some statistical relationship among the words. It has nothing to do with the concepts that it's giving you. And so we may learn to take instincts as the part of us that reflects how AI works, because we do tend to interpret ourselves through our latest technology. That is, vast number of inputs, so many that we can't even count them, both for AI and for instincts, that comes up with a result that we can't understand how it came from, where it came from, for both AI and instincts. But maybe that instinct is the closest analogy in human intelligence to how machine learning works. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is AI just keeps getting better and better, and unfortunately, humans are not getting better and better. So for right now, it's quite possible a coach is better than the top AI could be. That probably won't be true in a decade.
Your instincts are that it's 100%. You're only building in 20 because there's other intelligent people who think that you might be wrong. So your instincts are sort of...
I don't know if it's instincts. It's my looking at the inside. I'm like convinced it's 99%, but I have to remind myself that, there are people who understand this and who are a lot smarter than I am. So no matter how confident I am of something, I can't be like, well, they're all wrong and I'm right because I know I'm not the smartest person studying this. So I'm just, it's not really an instinct thing. It's more like a rationality thing where if enough people disagree with you, you have to give weight to their views.
We have a question on this side of the room.
Hello. Sorry, I apologize. I'm a little bit nervous. So you both have mentioned many times that there is a high probability for doom in the AI scenario. So my question is, do you think that the largely negative outlook on the pan out of AI, that it is ethical to keep producing these super intelligence computers when it could be at the expense of younger generations or the generations to come? Because
Oh no, it's truly horrible. It's worse than Hitler-level evil, what we're doing creating computer superintelligences before we learn to control them. It's by far the worst thing we're doing. And by the way, this is to get a little science fiction-y. If this goes really badly, we create these superintelligences, they don't just kill all life on Earth, and they go off into the universe and gather the resources of other planets. If the solution to the Fermi paradox is there's like trillions of planets out there that have intelligent life, but none of them are that advanced, we're killing them as well. Yeah, this is by far the most evil thing humans have ever done, to give a very clear answer to your question.
I'm only at 15% doom. So it's 15% of the worst evil we've ever done. And I think that there's possible tremendous benefit in terms not only of relief from oppressive work, but also relief from oppressive structures. There are ways in which, despite the bias problem that AI has, that's a problem that we can identify and can, never perfectly, but we can address. And so I have hope that with more AI, we will not only have more productive lives, but we will also have fairer and more equitable lives. But that will take a lot of work to make sure that those who are creating these doomsday machines have those sorts of values in them, as well as just getting stinking rich.
A question from the middle of the room.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to talk a little bit about the end game of AI. In a recent discussion that I was watching about AI, a separate one, someone brought up the assertion that AI is actually more impactful on the future of humanity than if we were to discover aliens tomorrow. And the logic behind that was that maybe after 1,000 years, the novelty of aliens wears off and we completely understand their culture, but AI has the potential, it has no ceiling in how intelligent it can get and how much it can change our lives. So how do you see the end game of AI? Is there a limit to how smart it can get? And then adding on to that, the distinction between our current AI models, which I think are all built to do specific things, specific jobs, language models, and the difference between that and a general AI that could be applied to anything. Is that something that's definitely coming, or is there even a question about whether a general AI is possible?
I mean, there are rumors that OpenAI has already created general AI and they haven't released it yet. I don't know if those are true or not. As for the limits, the people have explored like what's the theoretical fastest computer, and there is a limit. Physics seems to give a limit, but it's like way, way beyond anything we're at now. Like 10 to the big number beyond.
So I think it depends on what you mean by AGI, general problem solver. There's a sense in which computers, current plain old computers are general purpose tools, and I think AI is already a general purpose tool in its multiple different models. And conceivably, there could be sort of a master AI that is able to build specific models for specific tasks. And that would be, presumably cool, easier. There's a difference between that and the way that many people talk about AGI, which is to assume that it becomes intelligent in the sense in which I'm using it. That is a creature that is able to understand the world, act in it, and cares about it, has interests, has things that it wants, which for semi-theoretical reasons, non-technical, but sort of philosophical reasons, I do not think is possible, but I have deep concerns about my own position. I'm sorry, I don't think I answered anything, but I did draw a distinction, which is what professional philosophers do. Am I right?
That's all we do. That's all we do. So I see a lot of hands, which means that there's a lot of interest, and I think that that's exactly what we want out of a night like this. But I think we do have to bring the discussion to a close. Can we thank our speakers for everything?
Yes, I just want to add my thanks, and John, I want to thank you as well for being a great moderator. So tonight's event exemplifies what we're trying to do with this series, and so please stay tuned because we plan another one in the spring, and we hope to have you all come back and bring your friends. So thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.